What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, we're going to be going through the best draft strategy if you're picking later on in the first round of your fantasy football drafts. So over the last few days, I already went through early first round, mid first round. Now we're going to be looking at picks 9 through 12. So talking about some of the best targets that you guys should be looking out for in this ADP range. I'm going through 4 different mock drafts, so from pick 9, 10, 11, and 12, and then just talking about some general trends and strategies that I noticed kind of researching for this video. If you all do enjoy the content, you find it helpful, informative, entertaining, just do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. And then also leave your comments if you do have any. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. But let's jump into some of the round 1 targets. And as you can see, these are going to be some players that might be available when you're on the clock, picks 9 through 12 in the first round. So you can see I have them color coded. This is just, kind of explaining how interested I would be in drafting them at this price. So green means I think they're a great value. I think you should smash the draft button here. Yellow is, I think they're an all right value. Maybe I don't love it, but I'm fine with it. Red is I would be avoiding these players in this range. And then you can also see their consensus ADP next to their positional ranking, which is something I got by taking the combined ADP of ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper to get that ADP there. So starting off with Bijan Robinson and Tyreek Hill, I think in most drafts, both of these players are probably going to go top 8, which means they wouldn't be available 9, 10, 11, or 12. However, I have seen a few drafts here and there where one of these guys falls out of that spot. They fall to 9, they fall to 10. Maybe the draft starts off super running back heavy. Tyreek Hill's available. Maybe it starts off super wide receiver heavy. Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce, both go ahead of Bijan Robinson. Then it is possible these guys slip to like 9 or 10. If Bijan or Tyreek Hill slips into this range, for me, they're just like an auto draft. Wouldn't even think about it. Whatever one's available, that's the player I'd be going for. Then we have Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley here, and you can see I have these guys in yellow, which means I don't really love the price, but I'm all right with it. For me, I view Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley as like 1-2 turn guys, but I'd prefer to get them like 112 or later pretty much. So if I have the 109, 110, 111, I don't really love the idea of spending that on JT or Saquon, but I do understand if you want to just lock down a running back early on. Then we have Stephon Diggs here. For me, Stephon Diggs is my number 8 overall player. So if you're getting him 9, 10, 11, 12, I think that's a nice value. I do have Derrick Henry in red here, which means I'm just not interested at this price. For me, I do think there's kind of a tier break between Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, and then getting into Derrick Henry. I view guys like Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard. I have those guys ahead of Derrick Henry. I have Breece Hall ahead of Derrick Henry. I think Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry are very close in my rankings. So I just like some other running backs ahead of Derrick Henry, and I'm just not willing to reach, in the first round if I like some other running backs that you can get later on, ahead of him. Devontae Adams, I think a great option if you want an elite wide receiver at the 1-2 turn. Would prefer him at like the 111, 112, but still like him. And then Patrick Mahomes here, just not someone I'm interested. Quarterback first round. Honestly, quarterback first 2 rounds, going to be pretty out on it, so definitely passing on Patrick Mahomes. Now let's shift into the round 2 targets. So we're going to have some of the same guys here, and my stance may kind of change on them if they are second round picks. So you can see Saquon Barkley. I liked him as like a very late round 1, early round 2 guy. So I'm all in on early round 2 Saquon Barkley. Same thing with Stephon Diggs. If these guys are still there, I'm all on board. Still kind of out on Derrick Henry. Like I said, prefer guys like Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard. You can see Josh Jacobs going on later. So still not even super interested in Derrick Henry in early round 2. Devontae Adams, still very in on him. Still out on Patrick Mahomes. Then we kind of get some of these fresher options. The ADP was kind of really concentrated here, so there are a lot of guys who could go, late round 1, early round 2. CeeDee Lamb here, for me, I view him as a, easy round 1-2 turn guy. So if you're getting him round 2, I think he's a steal. I would honestly even consider him in round 1. I think I actually did draft him in round 1 in one of my mock drafts. Once we get into those, Josh Jacobs, I think he's a fine pick here. I do have Nick Chubb and Tony Pollard ahead of him, so I would prefer those guys. But if you do really like Josh Jacobs, I think drafting him, early, mid-ish second round is fine. A.J. Brown, same thing. I'm not as high on A.J. Brown as consensus. I'd prefer a guy going behind him like an Amon-Ra, but I do understand it. And then Nick Chubb, I do like him here. Nick Chubb is someone that I have not been in on in previous years. I'm very interested in him this year. I feel like the upside is there. He may have a receiving role. They've just brought in no competition for him. So he's someone that continues to move up my rankings. And I think like the next time I put out my running back rankings, I think he's going to be in that tier with Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, which means I'd kind of be considering him at that like 1-2 turn area. Now, the final set of targets we're going to be looking at round 3. And if you're looking at the players here, you may think there's not really any solid options because I only have 2 players in green, 4 in red, 2 in yellow. The 2 guys I have in green, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, these are both guys I'd consider early round 3. So if you're getting them late round 3, I think the value's there. Really like both of those guys. Then we have DK Metcalf, who I talked about, I think in yesterday's video, the pick 5 through 8 video. I'm just not super in on Metcalf. There are other wide receivers going after him I'd prefer, and I'll get into those in just a little bit. Joe Burrow, I view Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson ahead of Joe Burrow, so I'm not willing to take a late round 3 Burrow. Like I said, Lamar Jackson here. I'd be okay with Lamar Jackson. 3-4 turn, would probably prefer early 4th round, but either way, I think it's fine. Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones, these are just not players I'm really interested in here at the 3-4 turn. If I was looking for running backs at the spot, I'd consider guys like Najee, Travis Etienne, but Walker, Jones, for me, I just think you're kind of reaching here. I think there are better wide receivers available. Deebo Samuel, I'm not a big Deebo guy. I understand the appeal, so I kind of said I was fine with the pick. If you are looking for a running back in this range and you're not getting some crazy value on like a Breece Hall or Ramondre, I would be taking Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, I like Jahmyr Gibbs, especially in PPR, half-point PPR formats. I would easily take him over guys like Kenneth Walker and Aaron Jones. And then at the wide receiver position, I said I didn't really like DK. I'd be totally fine taking a Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper in this spot. Just because the ADP didn't necessarily line up doesn't mean I'm not interested in those guys at this late round 3 price. So I do think it's a fine spot to be picking. I just do think the running back position is going to be a little bit thin here, which is something we'll kind of get into in the mock drafts. But let's jump into the first mock draft. This is going to be a PPR draft from the 9th pick. 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex starting lineup. And we started this draft off by drafting Stephon Diggs at the 109. So unfortunately, we didn't get a falling Tyreek Hill or Bijan Robinson or Cooper Kupp. So I take my 8th overall player, which is Stephon Diggs. We lock up our, stud wide receiver 1. And then when we're getting into round 2, this is a spot where I really think we kind of have to consider going at least 1 running back. I've talked about this in the other 2 draft strategy videos. I think it's really tough if you do not leave the first 3 rounds with at least 1 running back you feel confident in. And at this spot, I do think running back gets a little bit thin once we're going to the back half or like towards the end of the 3rd round, right? Like I talked about, Jahmyr Gibbs is really like the only guy I'd be interested in at that ADP. And if he's not there, then you can kind of get into a tough spot. So I ended up going with Jonathan Taylor, plus a lot of my other wide receivers, Lamb, Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, all those dudes off the board. I also just felt like the value was there with Jonathan Taylor in terms of like being the best player available. So we start off with a Stephon Diggs, Jonathan Taylor, 1st and 2nd round. I think that's a really strong wide receiver 1 and running back 1 to start off our draft. And then getting into round 3, here is where we got a falling Breece Hall. And if you're going to give me Breece Hall late 3rd round, I'm going to be in on that all day long. I don't think this is going to happen consistently in drafts, but I do think it might happen occasionally. Some people concerned about the injury. You can even see Jahmyr Gibbs went ahead of him, Metcalf ahead of him. If I'm getting Breece Hall at the 309, I'm going to smash the draft button all day long. So through 3 rounds, 2 running backs, 1 wide receiver. We have the 4th round, swing back around. It looks like we could have gone with a Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields. At this spot, I just decided to go with an Amari Cooper, shake it up a little bit. 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs. Then in the 5th round, I thought this was an interesting spot where we could get an elite quarterback option. I didn't want to go tight end like a Kyle Pitts just yet. And, the wide receivers, I felt like there would be some solid available for us in the 6th round. So I go with Justin Herbert here in round 5, pair him as our starting quarterback. And I do think Herbert is a little bit undervalued this season. I think he's a lot closer to Joe Burrow than, where they're being drafted. I understand Joe Burrow is coming off the way better season, but we also have to consider the fact that Herbert had his weapons injured throughout the entire season. He was banged up throughout the entire year. And prior to last season, he's put up nothing but like absurd production at the quarterback position. So I do think those guys are pretty close. So if you're going to give me like a round and a half discount, I will take Herbert all day long. And then in round 6, we're going to stack Justin Herbert with Mike Williams. So now we have one of our flex spots filled up. Like I've been talking about in these other draft strategy videos, I pretty much, especially in PPR formats, I want to have wide receivers through the flex. So I get 1 or 2 running backs early on, and then I want wide receivers in the flex, and I even want some wide receiver depth as guys who can fill in the flex later on in the season. So Mike Williams round 6, we go Treylon Burks round 7. This was recorded before the news that DeAndre Hopkins is the favorite to go there, so keep that in mind. Jordan Addison round 8, and then Rashad Bateman round 9. So at this point, we have 6 wide receivers that I feel pretty confident in. So 4 in our starting lineup, 2 on the bench to fill in for bye weeks injuries. At this point, we haven't gone tight end, so we're kind of looking for a late round option. I just went back-to-back tight end. One player that I think maybe has some sneaky upside, but rookie tight ends, a little bit concerning. So I go Dalton Kincaid round 10. Then I go Tyler Higbee round 11, who I think is a really nice late round guy. And then just finish this draft up with, some depth running back options, handcuffs, Tank Bigsby, and Jaylen Warren. Overall, I feel like this draft is pretty solid. Tight end position, obviously, could be a little bit better, but I feel like our wide receivers are really strong. A running back room of Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall is great. And then Herbert at quarterback, I feel pretty solid in. So I do like the way this draft played out. I like how we kind of went balanced early on through 4 rounds, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. So now let's shift into the draft from the 10th overall spot. Once again, at PPR, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex spots. And we're picking here at the 110. This was a spot where we once again did not get a falling Bijan or a falling Tyreek Hill. So I went with Stephon Diggs once again. Didn't really want to shake it up. He's the guy that I value as the best option there. And then in round 2, instead of going with a running back, we could have gone with a Jonathan Taylor. I didn't want to have the same start, so I went with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love the value on Amon-Ra. I view him as a first-round guy, so getting him round 2 is going to be a steal for me. And this was a spot where I was a little bit concerned because if we don't get a running back right in round 3, we might be in a rough spot moving forward. However, Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy that I like to target in this area if you do need a running back. He falls to us in round 3, so he's going to slot in as our running back 1. Round 4, we get Keenan Allen. And then in round 5, just like we did in the last draft, going to stack Keenan Allen with Justin Herbert. We didn't get Keenan in the last draft, but we got Justin Herbert at quarterback. The way I saw in these drafts is that Justin Herbert is someone I like to kind of snag here as a quarterback option. You're probably not going to be super in on Lamar unless you want to get him, 3-4 turn Justin Fields, but you can kind of get like the Herbert, Lawrence territory at like the 5-6 turn, which is something I am pretty interested in. And then we go Mike Williams in round 6, another draft with Mike Williams. Some people may not like having Keenan Allen, Mike Williams on the same team. I don't really mind it. I think this is going to be a good offense. Plus, it's a long season. Trades can happen. All of that stuff. Now, this was a spot where we could have gone at the wide receiver position, but I actually like the value that was available at running back. Pretty rare for me to go round 7 and round 8 running back, in the same draft, but I do think the value lined up. So I went with Javonte Williams in round 7. We needed a running back 2. And then honestly, 8th round David Montgomery. I think I picked him in one of the drafts for pick 5 through 8. I'm not a huge David Montgomery guy. Like I said, I'm in on Jahmyr Gibbs, and we did draft Jahmyr Gibbs, but I picked him here. Once again, maybe not loving the kind of teammates in the backfield, but I do think you can kind of play your matchups, and we do have Javonte there also, and I guess you're kind of hedging your bets. If David Montgomery's the guy, he's going to end up being a steal at this ADP. If Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy, then Gibbs is going to be a steal at this ADP, and then you have handcuff value for kind of both of those options. So at this point, we have 4 wide receivers, 3 running backs. We've got the QB position filled up, so now we want to get some wide receiver depth. I go Elijah Moore, Cortland Sutton, 9-10. I think nice values there. Could have considered Bateman also, but I think we picked him in the last draft. So I wanted to shake it up a little bit. Once again, we're kind of in a spot where we didn't have a super strong tight end we felt confident in. So I went with Tyler Higbee, Kendre Miller as a depth at running back, and then finished it up with Irv Smith also at tight end. So kind of what we've seen so far is I think we can put together some pretty strong rosters. The one weakness I will say in both drafts has been the tight end position. But outside of that, I do feel like these drafts are coming together pretty well. Now moving over to the 11th pick. Once again, PPR, same format, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes. And this was honestly a very, very unique start to this draft. So I go CeeDee Lamb in round 1 at pick 111. Then I go with Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 202. So I wanted to get a wide receiver start. I think we did that in the last video also, or the last draft. Yeah, so we go wide receiver. But then this is where we ran into some problems here in round 3 because we did not have one of our running backs available. There was no Breece Hall. There was no Ramondre Stevenson. Jahmyr Gibbs was picked right before us at the 310. So this was a spot where I guess I could have gone quarterback with a guy like Lamar. I just hit the wide receiver position once again. So I went with Calvin Ridley. Then we got to the 4th round, Lamar Jackson off the board. Didn't love the running backs. I didn't want to force a pick, so I went with Calvin Ridley. Then we get to the 5th round, and once again, I didn't like any running backs, right? We just saw James Conner going round 5. I don't want to pick 5-6 turn Cam Akers, so I ended up going with DJ Moore. Now, I understand, right, 5 picks in, it's probably strange to have a player not even in your starting lineup, but throughout the NFL season, like DJ Moore is going to filter into the lineup. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be bye weeks. Not overly concerned about it. I wouldn't say it's an ideal start, but I'm not going to be someone who's going to force, a different position if the value's not there. Round 6, go with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, get that stack with Calvin Ridley. And now we're in a spot where it's like, all right, we got to get serious about the running back position. At this point, no running backs in our lineup, but I think we honestly recovered pretty well here. We went David Montgomery in round 7, James Cook in round 8, both guys in semi-ambiguous backfields. Then we go Devin A-Chain in round 9. Obviously, you're hoping that Dalvin Cook doesn't go there. Once again, we didn't have a great start at the tight end position, so I go Kincaid, Dulcich, back-to-back. And unfortunately, this draft didn't have a ton of bench spots, but with this kind of draft setup, I probably would have snagged one more wide receiver since we only had 5. But since our wide receiver position was so strong, I would have just hammered like handcuff running backs because that is the weakness. So guys like Jalen Warren, Tank Bigsby, Roshan Johnson, trying to think of some more, Tajay Spears. Those are the types of guys I would be looking for to kind of round out our bench. So probably the most unique build. If I'm being honest, I don't think I love it, but our wide receivers are really strong, just kind of showing you what could happen if you don't snag a a running back in the first 2-ish rounds. If you do like this start, then, by all means, take those wide receivers early and often. And then shifting into our final mock draft, pick 12, I completely flipped the script from the last draft. Instead of going wide receiver, I went running back. I think this is a nice spot where if you do like these 1-2 turn running backs, hit a Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor 1-2 turn, just get 2 stud running backs to start off the draft. So I do like that. And then heading into round 3, there wasn't really a running back available. I don't know if I'd want to start off 3 straight running backs. We had some decent wide receivers available, like a Keenan Allen. I do like him. We could have gone Lamar Jackson. But this was a spot where we had Josh Allen fall to the 312. I don't really know why I said his name like that. Josh Allen, we had him fall to the 312. And I talked about how I don't want round 2 quarterbacks. I don't even really want early round 3, mid round 3 options. But if you're going to give me Josh Allen and his elite ceiling, 25 points per game, if you're going to give me him at the 312, I'm going to have to pull the trigger. So I go with Josh Allen. Our first 3 picks, Saquon, JT, Josh Allen. Now 3 rounds in, we have no wide receivers. I want wide receivers through the flex, so we're just going to hammer the wide receiver position. Once again, I went Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. I guess those are guys, honestly, where their ADP just kind of lines up with this spot, and I like both of them. So Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, Jordan Addison, 4 straight rounds. This is the best tight end I think we've had in these videos. Maybe not a spot that's super conducive to getting a great option because I don't really love early 6th round Goddard or Waller, and they don't really fall to like late 7th round. But we go with David Njoku in round 8. I like him as like one of those back end tight end one options where you probably don't need a second guy there, unless you're going with like a Higbee Kincaid like I've done earlier on. Then we get two more wide receivers, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore. And then since we hadn't hit the running back position in a while, just fire off some handcuffs, Kendre Miller, Roshan Johnson, and Chase Brown. I think this team is really interesting. I kind of like the start, the running back start. If you can get some value at wide receiver, it could make some sense. But I do think it kind of played out well for us. Plus the value of Josh Allen in the 3rd round, I think is also really interesting there. And that is something I will take, even though I'm not super big on like early quarterback. But early, I mean like round 1, round 2, early round 3. So what do you guys think about these mocks? I kind of wanted to, give you guys some different perspectives. So we went some heavy wide receiver, running back starts, some wide receiver, running back starts. We had the, just crazy wide receiver run, and then the pick 12 running back to start it off. I think it's always really important to kind of understand the ADP of the platform you're drafting on, but I kind of feel like it's even more important when you're picking from this like 9 through 12 spot, because I do think the value of those 3rd round running backs will play a big role. If you're going to be able to get like a Ramondre or Jahmyr Gibbs in the late 3rd round, I feel like it really opens up what you can do in round 1, round 2. Maybe you take no running backs, maybe you take only one running back. But like I've been talking about, I do think you want at least one. We did have the one draft where we didn't get that, but I don't really love the idea of having 2 running backs starting that I don't feel overly confident in. So those are kind of my takeaways here, but I do think it's a very fun spot to draft just because there are lots of different running backs you can mix and match with. Same thing with wide receivers, right? Like some people view A.J. Brown as like the best option in this range. Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So many options. Same thing at the running back position. Maybe you get a falling Bijan, Saquon, JT, Chubb's going to creep up into that range. You'll see Henry Jacobs go there also. So I think a fun spot to draft. If you all enjoyed the content, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for staying all the way through the end, and I will see you all in the next one.